Billy Luna.
Part 2. John Sonny Franzese, Cosa Nostra legend, committed his first murder and became a made member of the Mafia at the age of 14. Friend and confidant of Cosa Nostra superstars Albert Anastasia and Vito Genovese, rose to the rank of Colombo family underboss. Tough as nails, killer of more than 55 men, loving father, ladies' man, underworld celebrity, Mafia rock star, idol of John Gotti, betrayed by his own sons and sent to prison at the age of 93. He was there at the dawn of Cosa Nostra and lived to see its fall. Today's guest is S.J. Peddie, Pulitzer-Prize winning investigative journalist and author of the book Sonny, Last of the Old-Time Mafia Bosses, John Sonny Franzese.
Today on Part 2.
He would pretend that he didn't know what omerta was.
That's one of the lines I love from your book. It's like, omerta. So this is Sonny Franzese. Omerta. What's that?
That's a good way of, that's a good imitation. That's how he sounded. When I was interviewing him, I said, Sonny, did you know Frank Sinatra? And he looked at me and he said, you asked the question the wrong way. The question should have been, did Frank Sinatra know Sonny Franzese? And that was Sonny. And he really was the dominant guy in that relationship.
This gentleman is Joe Bonanno, also known as Joe Bananas. What can you tell me about him?
Well, I can tell you that Sonny referred to him as Joe Bananas, and Sonny was convinced that he gave his name to Mario Puzo, author of The Godfather, so that the oldest son in that story was named Sonny, and he believed that Joe Bananas had done it to make him look bad. He was also pretty convinced. I'm not sure that he really believed that. I think that Joe Bananas was a favorite target of Sonny's because obviously anyone in that world hated him because he tried to take over the commission. He really, really disliked Joe Bananas.
Back in the proverbial day, I think probably circa, 1962, he hatched a plan to take out Carlo Gambino and Tommy Lucchese, and he went to Joe Magliocco, who was the acting boss or boss of the Profaci family at the time.
Exactly. He was acting boss, I think, at the time.
And Joe Magliocco handed the contract over to Joe Colombo, and Joe Colombo went to Carlo Gambino with it, spilled the beans, and was rewarded by being made boss of the family, and that's why we call it the Colombo family, right?
Well, that's absolutely true. And Sonny and Joe Colombo were very, very close. They ran some craps games together. They did a lot of business together. And Sonny was a behind-the-scenes negotiator. As you know, the Profaci family, which later became the Colombo family, was a very violent family. They had a lot of internal warfare, much more so than the other four families in New York. And Sonny was often the mediator. But the best way to describe it is he had a disdain for Joe Bananas.
You know, the thing about that subject with, say a Sonny Franzese versus a Joe Bonanno is that Sonny Franzese is a very closed-mouth man. And I mean, I have to give you insane kudos for getting this man to agree to a series of interviews, because this is, in some senses, Sonny and Joe are similar in that they've both been around for a long time, were there at the beginning, have that kind of cred. But the difference, I think they diverge when you talk about the fact that Sonny kept his mouth shut. Like I think you had mentioned, not only kept his mouth shut in terms of testifying and going to jail, but also he didn't even on illegal or legal wiretaps talk. He didn't say a word, whereas Joe Bonanno published a book, which is kind of verboten in those circles.
Well, it absolutely is. And when you say that I got interviews with Sonny, I did. I interviewed him 6 times, but he never even acknowledged the existence of the mafia. And at one point, I asked him about Omerta. And this is a man who at the time was over 100 years old, and he was very sharp, very lucid, very smart. And suddenly he would pretend that he didn't know what Omerta was. He'd say, What? What? What are you talking about? You know?
I love it.
So Sonny talked to me a lot about his life, and he talked about a lot of the characters, but he was very careful. He didn't give anyone up.
That's one of the lines I love. I think from your book, it's like, Omerta. So this is Sonny Franzese. Omerta. What's that?
That's a good way of. That's a good imitation. That's how he sounded. It's true.
That's the proverbial dummying up, and that's
Yeah.
so that's a big difference between these two gentlemen. Okay, so next on our list is kind of where it all started. This is Joe Cargo Valachi.
Valachi rocked the world in 1963 when he testified before the Senate McClellan Committee about the Mafia. He was the first guy to bring it out into the open, and these hearings were huge television watching. And he did it because he was afraid he was going to be killed in prison, and he thought it was his safest option. He gave a lot of information about other gangsters, and prosecutors from literally all over the country went to talk to Valachi after the hearings to get whatever information he had about various gangsters. And of course, one of the gangsters he provided information on was Sonny Franzese.
Do you know what he provided about Sonny specifically?
But the businesses he was in, you know, the loan sharking, the gambling, where he was based, and also said that he was a guy who was deeply respected. He had a lot of respect, and he described Sonny as an up-and-comer in the family.
It's interesting, too. Valachi obviously was a made member of what was at that point the Genovese crime family under Vito Genovese, and Vito Genovese was actually the best man at his wedding, and they were tight at one point. And this is back in the day. It's funny, there's such a prohibition on the dealing of narcotics currently in Cosa Nostra, but back then everybody was doing narcotics. So they were both, I think, in prison for narcotics, as everyone was, you know. And he was paranoid that Genovese was going to turn on him, and then his paranoia just festered. And he was, this is a story of a foot soldier. He's a lower guy, but still he had a good view.
Oh, and he watched everything. And that's the thing about foot soldiers. They're looking up. They're paying close attention to the guys above them. So, and the other thing about that life is there are no friends in that life. You have to worry about your friends turning on you, because if a hit has been authorized, it's going to be your best friend who's going to walk you to your death. And that has happened over and over and over again. And the weird thing from my perspective is, and I saw Sonny with a bunch of his guys, and I know how much these guys love the camaraderie, the joking around and hanging with the other guys. But at any minute, one of those guys could betray you.
Yeah, and most of the time will. I mean, Sonny's unique in the fact that, well, he didn't technically die in prison, but we'll get into all that later. But he... it's either you're going to end up dead or in prison. It's pretty much the way, or in witness protection, I guess, right? Those are the kind of three options. Here we have a gentleman who goes by Frank Albert Sinatra.
I don't know if I put this in the book, but it's one of the stories that stuck with me that Sonny told me. One day when I was interviewing him, I said, "Sonny, did you know Frank Sinatra?" And he looked at me and he said, "You asked the question the wrong way. The question should have been, did Frank Sinatra know Sonny Franzese?" And that was Sonny. And he really was the dominant guy in that relationship. He met him in the rustic cabin when he was performing, and a fight, which was in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, a fight breaks out, and Sonny jumped in to help him because Sinatra was a skinny kid in his view, and Sonny was a pretty good boxer and a very, very good fighter. So they became friends after that. I remember Sonny told me a story at the Copacabana, which was a favorite hangout of both Sinatra and Sonny. Sinatra would follow him and call out his name because he would try to get him to turn around. And Sonny wouldn't turn around. He made Sinatra come to him. He also described a pretty hot and heavy makeout session with Ava Gardner in a back room while Sinatra was performing on the stage of the Copacabana. So this guy, he played with fire when it came to Sinatra.
We'll get more into that Ava Gardner makeout sesh backstage while Frank was actually on stage when we get into more of Sonny Franzese as the movie star, rock star, because I'm kind of fascinated by it. And I mean, we'll talk about it later, but I had mentioned there's a lot of people that claim to have done this and claim to have done that with various women. And there's something about Sonny that I just simply believe. It's like certain, gangsters and certain people say things and I just, but Sonny, I believe it.
The other thing, and forgive me if I go on too long about this, but Bobby Darin, the great singer of Splish Splash and Mac the Knife and all those great songs, he was with Sonny. And Darin and Sinatra had this terrible rivalry because Sonny said, Darin had a much better voice than Sinatra. Really, he could sing all sorts of things that Sinatra couldn't sing. But it never really played out the way it could have because Darin died at a very young age. I think he was about 38. He died of a heart attack when he was 73, in 1973, when he was about 38 years old.
Tune in next week for part 3.
Some of his nicknames are Junior, the Snake, Carmine, Persico.
Well, Carmine Persico, as you know, became boss of the Colombo crime family. He was also personally very close to the Franzese family. He hated the nickname Snake.
Link to part 1 in comments and on the video's end screen. Billy Luna. This is Victoria Luna. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and share with your mates on social media. Check out these awesome videos now. Ciao.